Alright, let's see what we got here. Alright, there's a few bad guys, but we're trying to stay stealthy. We don't want to raise an alarm. That means the most likely course is to go through this. Oh, oh, I can feel it squishing in between my toes. Giant clumps of crap. Oh, I don't know if I'd be able to do that in real life. There's a lot of things I could do in real life, but this one? Oh, I don't know. Like, how does this guy not be able to smell me coming up behind him? Oh, that would not wash out of a coat easily. Oh.
What's that smell?
Oh, that would be me. I've been swimming in raw sewage. I love it. I love it!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I am SocioPsycho, and today we are going to be taking a look at Deus Ex Human Revolution. This is a reboot of the older series, which came out quite a while ago, over 10 years. Is it any good? Is it any bad? Well, let's find out. And we'll start off with the fact that it is available for PC and Mac. The PC version was created by Eidos Montreal, and the Mac version was created by Feral Interactive. And when we go into the options menu here, we'll jump into the video settings. You can see they have a brightness setting, which is nice. They have display mode, large variable of screen resolutions, which is definitely appreciated. They also have a refresh rate. Now you can increase the refresh rate if your monitor will allow it, of course. For me, it's been running at 60 frames per second with no issues whatsoever on performance side. I haven't had any tearing or clipping. I haven't had any crashes either. In technicality, the only clipping that there has been is if you do a takedown move on somebody and it's an awkward position that you're in, and sometimes you'll clip through a desk. But it doesn't give anything away, you don't lose anything of value, and it's rare, but that's about it. Aspect ratio, full screen, and as you can see, a few more other options. When we jump into advanced, now they do have a decent amount of options that you would expect from a game of this development size. And as you can see, there are a lot of different choices that you will be able to pick from to really enhance your gameplay fashion and make it just move over as strong as possible. In audio, you have everything you need split up on different sliders, which is definitely nice, and there are subtitles. The music in the game is done very well to help propel an atmosphere, and the dialogue is done in a very professional manner, and we'll get into that during story. When we jump into the control options of the game, you do have mouse sensitivity and keyboard reconfigurations if you wish to, a main action and a secondary action to each ability, which is definitely nice to see. No problem in being able to rebind keys at all. It's gone over very smooth, and you do have the option to play with a gamepad if you do wish it. Now, as you can see, there are even more options in the gameplay setting, which pretty much do exactly that. Couple subjective choices based on the player's desire of how they want to play. So as you can see, you have a lot to choose from, and you also have tutorials on the main page. The game does a very good job at iterating to you exactly how to progress through the game, and there shouldn't be any frustrations during the beginning of a game in understanding what you are doing to control your character. But if you forget, you can always go back to a tutorial, and that's definitely nice. When you start a new game, you do have the option in between 3 different challenge types, and this does play a severe role into your ability because enemies will not only be more alert to you, but they will do much more damage if you get hit by them. They're much more aware of the situation. Even on the easiest setting, Tell Me a Story, it's still challenging. It's not a walk in the park, but if you're not good at first-person shooters, you'll be able to get through with fair leniency, but there are a couple of spots where you will have to try and actually give effort. So it still has that sense of challenge or a sense of urgency where you need to actually try to be able to succeed, and that's definitely nice. So when we jump in here into the game, we're going to start talking with our first point being the skills that you have available. The game is a RPG first-person shooter style game, and the story of the game is actually done very well, and while we'll go into that in a moment, the first thing and important thing to note is the upgrade capability of the character. You are augmented, and the augmentations that you hold aren't online fully yet. As you gain experience points, as we look in the top right hand side, you can see next praxis. Now praxis kits, or praxis points as we see in the middle bottom, are points that are available to upgrade skills and abilities which will give you an enhancement over the terrain and enemies that you face. These come and are gained by experience, although you can buy and purchase a few points here and there throughout the different levels via limb clinics. You're pretty much a walking cyborg, really enhanced in augmentations due to what the story elements of the game are, but everything ties in pretty well. And as you progress forward, if we go through some of these, you have the availability to upgrade abilities, but not all abilities are passive. Some are activated, and these activated abilities do act on a energy source battery life. You have the availability and option to increase your energy level upgrade if you wish to, as you can see as I'm showing you here, and also the recharge rate of your batteries. These will allow you to carry out certain moves or tasks that you may want to accomplish, as purchasing a new ability from the menu is actually quite easy. The first one will cost you 2, and it's simply just buy and confirm, and then you get that passive immunity or buff or passive ability, whatever the case may be for the ability that you're looking for. There is a large variable, and that's what's really important. The variable of how your skills interact with the character in the world are very well done. As you can see here in some of these abilities, whether it be a takedown, where you can take down a single individual, blast through weakened walls, move and throw heavier objects. There are objects in the game, if I don't have this move and throw heavier objects, I may not be able to move a large object that's restraining my pathway, and I'll have to find another way around. And the same thing with punching through a wall. There may be a stealthy way to go, ironically, if I punch through a wall versus instead of sneaking through an entire area of enemies. And you also have the availability to increase your inventory size. Your inventory size does not start with a full availability open to you, and you do need to upgrade it as the game progresses forward in order for you to really maximize how much you can carry. In the game, you have different types of enhancements, such as the social enhancement. The social enhancement allows you to get a little bit of an edge while in conversations with other people. As I said, the game does have an RPG element to you. It is more of a story-driven as you understand what's going through the world, and your choices don't matter too much in the long run, minus the ending, of course. The ending of the game is done pretty well in the choice category. But the choices you do have throughout the story are minor ones that make your own character and how you interact with the characters, how the characters interact with you, are decent enough. It's varied to a point where an emotional and intelligent enhancer will actually allow you to change the outcome or give you an advantage overall. But it's not going to have 40 options and really in-depth choice decisions that you may be expecting from a true RPG. It is RPG in a story element, not in a choice of how you progress through the story, which isn't bad at all. You have options to talk to some people in different fashions, but you're either going to succeed in getting information from them or failing to do so, or perhaps failing your quest overall, depending on the quest. But nothing that really would derive or change the atmosphere of the game overall into the ending of the story. It just allows a small personality tweakage for the individual player, which is nice. But like I said, the real choice comes down to the ending in the game, which is actually done pretty well. Now, one thing that you will notice as I'm going through these different systems that you have the availability to upgrade to is the hack system. Now, in the game, there is a hacking, I want to say minigame, but at the same time, it's not really fair to call it a minigame when it is one of the larger aspects of the game. Now, you can skip it if you don't like it, and there are ways to get around it, yes. But the majority of the nodes that come down to requiring you to hack a terminal or some such does base on the levels. There are different types of security. If you're trying to get into a garage and it's security 1, it's going to be easier to get through than if it's security 5. Or if you're onto a console and you're trying to deactivate cameras or take over turrets or robots, if the availability for that console allows it. These are not mandatory, as there is a way due to the level design to be able to get around that individual aspect of the game. You can easily get around the fact that, oh, I can't get through this door. Well, there's another way to get through the door. We'll get to your location. It's good to have a few points in your hacking skills and abilities, but if you don't enjoy the hacking minigame or don't care about the experience that it does give, then the level design is done in a fashion where you don't need to worry about that being a primary focus of the game. You will see a lot of it throughout the game if you are looking, but it's not something that is forced upon you. Hacking skills are the way you're doomed. And that's definitely nice to point out there, that all these abilities, all of these skills have different feedbacks. You can go more stealth approach and have a cloaking system and make sure you make less noise while you're moving, or you don't have to. You can go for a larger inventory, large hacking first, or increased takedown capabilities. The availability to minimize how much your weapon has a recoil on it. There are these different variables to how you want to play, and as you do progress through the game, more of these options will become more available to you. But it never forces these augmentations upon you. You don't feel as if, unless you're a completionist, of course, if you're a completionist, then not being able to get through that wall or get through that one terminal is going to bother you. But if you're not a completionist, you never feel as if you have to have a certain pattern of enhancements in order to survive. You can get by the game without having to worry about what you pick. It's very lenient, and the level design does support that, and that's definitely something very nice. There is the landing system. You can fall from a very large height. Without it, you'll probably go splat and die very easily. But with something like this, you can survive from very large heights. It is a nice correlation between the abilities, the convenience, and the level design all tied in together. It's done very well in the skill categorization, whether the improvements in the takedowns, the improvements in damage mitigation, whatever the case may be exactly, it does affect the game style play and how you as the player react to the world, not in a mandatory fashion of being stonewalled by the world. Which brings us into the weapon category. Weapons are pretty much the same way in a fashion to the skills and abilities. When we click on the combat rifle and we examine, you'll see that the combat rifle on the top corner has availabilities for enhancements alone. My rifle has a silencer and a laser targeter, but it also has the availability of another special kit to be added onto it. Now in the bottom you'll see the rate of fire, reload speed, and so on. The green bars mean that there's room for improvement. As you can see here, there's a shallow green and then there's a thick green. The shallow green shows that the upgrade of the weapon can be increased even more. So this is very important, because as the weapons progress forward throughout the game and you find these different kits which will allow for 1 point of an increase in these different capabilities, you come to realize that yes, you're progressing through the game and you're getting more powerful, but your abilities that you have aren't open for abuse. And this is what's really important and why the game balances out so well. The weapons are what upgrades as you go through the game. Now you will need to spend your upgrade kits that you find onto the weapons. These are simple little kits that you just click on and combine with a weapon. It's not difficult at all, and you will find plenty of them throughout the world. A weapon that has been upgraded more to its maximum capability is going to be much more useful to you in combat. It doesn't mean if you don't have a weapon that is fully upgraded that it's going to be irrelevant. That's not the case at all. Of course, different weapons and different upgrades are going to wield a better result. If I have a heavy machine gun / assault cannon, the kickback on that is going to be immense. But if I have the availability in my skills I've selected to minimize the kickback from weapon fire, it's going to make a difference. And then throw that into with all my other abilities that I've upgraded into it, and you can feel a sense of power as you progress forward. The game leaves it up to you. You will have enough power even if you completely ignore upgrading weapons and you continuously switch out through different weapons. You're not at a disadvantage. You're still able to survive and fight through enemy hordes without too much issue. But it comes down to convenience depending on your playstyle and what weapons you're using. So as we can see here when we look at the weapons themselves, they all share the same qualities in the reload speed or attack speed that you can upgrade. The difference comes into how they handle. The weapons feel good, they look good, they feel heavy, and the upgrades and capabilities and the areas where you implement them only improve upon that aspect. It doesn't diminish the worth of the weapons. Now as you can see in this test area where we're just killing hostiles with the assault cannon, it does have some kick. Now this is before I have the upgrade of reducing the kickback, but as you can see, the base level of it does really have a kickback, and so it's more important to have small sturdy bursts, but they do a lot of damage, and this is not upgraded. So if you want to build yourself around a certain fashion or idea in the capability of having a weapon that really plays more to your game style or preference, that is availability to you. Whether it be a simple handgun, which has medium range, sounds good, feels good, reload time's good, they feel and play decently. I personally more prefer the assault rifle. With my upgrades, it's much more easier to just take out somebody and have a bit more range to do it in. But the important factor is to note that whether it be a weapon that you're carrying with you through multiple missions, or a weapon you just grab off a dead guard, it doesn't mean that the weapon you grab from the ground is not going to be effective against your target. Now there are some situations where that may not be the most reliable or helpful weapon defending or defeating an enemy. Obviously, if you pick up a revolver and try shooting a giant robot with it, you're gonna be a little outsourced on the damage there. And an EMP grenade is gonna do a much better job of it than your little revolver. But the fact of the matter is, for majority of the situations you come across, should you get engaged in combat and you find yourself needing to fight your way through and you're running out of ammo, the weapons you've picked up before or the ammo you've picked up before have an availability for you to actually fight without feeling like you're fighting at a disadvantage. I really enjoyed the gameplay and the combat style of the game, and that has to come down to the fact that they allow you more than 3 weapons. You have the availability to take in how many weapons you can hold. If you want to take in a revolver, a handgun, and then an SMG, or an assault rifle, a shotgun, a rocket launcher, and a sniper rifle, depending on what your playstyle may be or what weapons you want to take in with you, there is the availability to carry more than 3 weapons. And this is so huge because they allow you to pick up and drop weapons whenever you want with ease, and you can carry weapons for however long you want. It's really annoying when games tie you down to 1 or 2, at best 3 weapons in modern day shooters, and it's just really annoying and frustrating because you don't have that choice. You don't have that weapon that you're saving up for that one special boss or that special occasion or that what if factor. But having the availability to carry it around that ace up your sleeve if need be is definitely nice to have. And I can respect the game for allowing the player to actually have an inventory system where they can make the decision upon themselves where yes, I want to take this weapon, no, I don't want to take that weapon. Which does bring us into the combat. Now the combat in the game does have a lot of redeeming qualities about it, and most of that does come into a level design aspect, but we're going to try to focus more upon the enemy action itself in this segment. Because when you fight an enemy, they will hide behind cover, and they will try to flank you if they have the availability or manpower to do so. If you're in an area where you know you can get compromised by being flanked, and the enemy has the numbers, they will attempt to flank you, putting you in an awkward position in hopes to defeat you. Now it does come down to the difficulty level that you have chosen. On a harder difficulty, it's going to be much easier for them to actually be able to hit you and kill you. The accuracy will be increased, and the amount of damage that they do is really going to own your face if you're not careful. Obviously, you're not going to be able to take as much damage on a harder difficulty as you are on the easiest difficulty. That just makes sense. And when it comes down to accuracy, it's very important to note on the lowest setting of difficulty, you are still getting hit. There's not a retarded case of, oh, he shot at me 12 times and only 3 of those times it hit me. No, he shot you 12 times and 11 of those times you got hit. But it goes more into the damage aspect rather than the aiming aspect of the game. The aiming aspect that's been minimalized on the lower difficulty is just the willingness to move to get to that vantage point or flank as fast to take that opportune time or split second that he would on a harder difficulty. There's more of a slower style reaction time, but he still reacts, and that's what's important to note. It does allow a challenge on a higher difficulty, but it also allows people who may not be loving the idea of a first-person shooter but want to experience it, it balances out and it doesn't abuse the player's capability or incapability to be able to fight through the enemies. And this is an important factor because when it comes into combat, it does have an autosave feature in the game, and you'll see it pop up very fast and very subtly throughout the game. So if the game does have some sort of issue, whether it be a bug or a death, you have the reassurance that when you load back up into the game, you're not going to be that far from where you were. And that's definitely nice to know. So it takes care of the player, and it doesn't make the combat at any point feel as if it's forced upon you or you're not being respected in the time that you're putting into the game. And that's very important to note. Now the combat also ties into the stealth aspect of the game. You do have weapons and you do have the availability to take down opponents, whether it be a melee kill or a melee knockout. The style of the experience points that you are able to gain do vary. If you try to take somebody out with guns and you just shoot them in the chest, you only get 10. If you do a headshot, you'll get 20. If you kill them, you'll get 30 to 40 if it's a melee kill, and if it's a melee knockout, then you'll get 50. The game goes on a forced sense of righteousness. Now, this can be argued because the character you're playing is that sort of mentality where he is a bad guy in some fashions due to your character's actions, but at the same time he's led throughout the entire story as a good guy or somebody looking for truth and justice. The annoying part is the fact that you do have the discrepancy in between a melee kill and a knockout. If you have to sneak up to somebody to perform either of the tasks and you kill somebody, it should be fairly fast because you're a professional. Knocking somebody out will take a little bit longer. In the animational cutscenes that they have, which relay knocking somebody out or killing them, they are about the same. There are different styles depending on the location and type of enemy that you're facing that can change the speed of how long it takes to knock out, but the rest of the world is paused for that time. When that scene is happening, the rest of the world isn't reacting, so you're not losing time based on how long the knockout scene actually is, or the kill scene actually is. So you are able to react almost instantly to the next threat, should you be able to. The annoying part is the fact that they force this, well, if you want the most experience from your takedowns, then you need to do so in a melee fashion that is just knocking them out. It's putting this stigma type on the character, or more importantly on the player, and it can really hurt how the player progresses through the game or feels they're progressing through the game. Now I agree there should be a difference in between taking somebody out with a rifle versus taking somebody out with a headshot with a sniper rifle, or taking people out melee style by sneaking up to them. There should be an experience cap because of the difference in these abilities. The part I don't like personally is just the discrepancy in between how much you gain in between knocking out or killing. That may not be an issue for you, or it may be. That's up to your own personality type. But the sneaking in the game does fit into the combat system very importantly. As you progress through the different levels and through the different missions, you will find that combat doesn't have to be guns blazing through everything. The game has the availability to be completely ghost, never setting off an alarm, never being seen by an enemy, and nobody knowing that you were even there. The thing is, when you do complete a ghost play of a mission, you get a bonus. At the end of a mission, you'll gain a reward in experience for completing a mission, just like in any RPG. But if you do it by not being seen, then you'll get a ghost reward for about around 500. There are some minor variables depending on how you interacted. Maybe you killed some people but never set off an alarm and you'll get a bonus of XP. The stealth aspect of the game doesn't just tie into how well you're able to be seen or not be seen. It's not a cloak and daggers type game. There aren't shadows to hide in. There's not magical spells to distract the enemy with. Now you do have the availability, if you have an object, to throw an object across the room if you want them to explore it, and that may hurt your ghost playthrough, but it goes by a cover system. A very sensible and easy to follow cover system by hiding behind different canisters or walls or railings of the level design. There are abilities in the game which do help tie into this aspect. As we said, you do have energy which you can upgrade and you can replenish by eating energy sticks, which you can buy at merchants or find and save up through the levels. You do have the availability to cloak. Cloak does wear down your energy rather fast. You'll get 3 seconds per energy battery you have, and then it's over. It's not something that's open for abuse. It's something that has to be used in a very certain area or time when you're getting stuck. It's definitely not something that you just pop all the time. It doesn't have an abuse cycle fit into it in any regard. Your energy is not going to resupply past one battery, and therefore you can't just wait for it to go all the way back up and then cloak back through another portion of a map. It does a very well done job of finding a balance in between how many enemies you face and the abilities that you have and the availability to get through these enemies. No point did I feel as if the game was cheap or imbalanced in some fashion. I never felt as if, oh no, there's so many different enemies in this room. The only way for me to get through this room is for me to try to abuse one of the systems I have, such as activating a cloaking shield. And the reason that has the availability to be that way is due to the level design. The level design is done very well. Now when we look outside at a police station, for instance, this is one of the missions you need to get into a police station, there are a multitude of ways to get into the station. You can try to charm and persuade your way through the front door, and you'll have access to them first level. You can jump over a fence if you have the right augmentations, or you can pathfind your way through an area of electricity, which will kill you if it touches you. You could go down below into the sewers. You'll enter from a rooftop. Now, not every mission is going to have 5 or 6 pathways for you to get into the area that you want to go, but they have 2 to 4. If I'm in a building and I need to get down a floor, obviously there are stairs. Well, why don't I take the elevator shaft or the elevator? Or why don't I find that vent that is going to get me there instead? Oh no, there's a giant room and it has 20 enemies in it. How do I ever get through this? Well, who says you gotta go through it? Because the way the level design is done, there is actually another route. If you're careful enough, there's still some areas where you think you might be safe, but they'll still see you due to holes in the vents or whatever the case may be. You do have to be careful. You do have to realize what you're doing. But the fact is they allow for the circumvention of entire zones of enemies. Hey, this room has 20 enemies in it, but I have the availability to bypass all 20 enemies. They did a very important thing here. They built the game and they said, play as you want. We are not going to force you to play in one strict fashion. You have the availability to play the way you want. We're not going to force you to look at all these shiny babbles that we created, explore, and find your own way. Because they allowed that, because they allowed for the circumvention of entire troops by taking an alternate path, they really opened up the game to the player's capability and choice, which allowed people to experience the game in new ways, to find a stealthy approach where they might not have seen before, or challenge the stealth aspect to go the harder way next time. The stealth in the game is done actually quite well. There is an alarm system in the game, and this goes to whether you're trying to stealth through or not. If you're seen, one guard will alert all the other guards. And if that guard is near a item which he can then put his hand into and scan and sound the building alarm, then everybody in the building is going to be alert. There are cameras, which if they spot you, they'll set off an alarm. If you shoot them, they'll send off an alarm. There are robots, which will do the same thing. It does have stealth aspects integrated into the game, but the stealth aspects, just like the variation in the abilities, are not forced upon you. You still have the option to play as you want, and you can go through the entire game killing every single person in the entire world in some sort of bloodthirsty massacre, and then your second playthrough you try to ghost it, or at least add stealth elements to your game. You have this availability to play as you want, and that's really important. It never felt as if I had to stealth through a certain area. I was able to integrate stealth aspects into combat elements, and by using and having the availability to use both, I was able to enjoy my playthrough a lot more because I wasn't scalded for one or the other. Which brings us to the story. The story of the game is where you work for Seraph Industries. They are leading in robotic and augmentations of the human body. Now, what you'll be able to tell if you play the beginning of the game is that your company is attacked and you are gravely injured, and the only way for them to save you was to really reconstruct your entire body with augmentations. You're like an improved version of RoboCop. The story as it progresses through the game is to find out who attacked and killed the people at the company, Seraph Industries. And it leads you down this rabbit hole of ever-expanding sense of things are getting pretty serious. The environment interacts with itself as you interact with it, and the environment seems to change due to how the events in the world are changing. People are upset about human augmentations because it's unnatural, it's not the will of religious movements, as the holy creator in their mind would want and deem it unnatural. So, riots break out, violence occurs, and there is throughout the entire game, this sense of distaste on one end of anybody who's augmented, this use and need for augmentations in a military fashion, and then all the people in between who just are trying to get by on their daily life. You lost your arm in an incident. You're not a military person. You're just a regular civilian. You lost your arm driving home one night and your car got into an accident. Well, now you have a replacement arm. Does that make you evil? Unnatural? The game has a large philosophical aspect to it, and the deeper you get into the game, the more it ties into, up until the end when you have to choose and it explodes into what happens, as I'm not going to spoil anything for you. The voice acting throughout the game, as well as the cutscenes during the game, are done in a very professional manner, as you would expect from a title this large. It is a little disconnecting. Some of the cutscenes are definitely more rendered than the actual game. Increased shadow capability and detailed texturization in certain areas, and then when you pop back out of a cutscene, it's a bit of a downgrade. I think that was a serious mistake on their part. They should have stuck with one aesthetic and used the game aesthetics to help propel and connect people into the story. Now I know they were trying to make it look cooler and look more sharp and crisper, and it does what it needs to do in feeling like, hey, whoa, this is a cool cutscene. But then when you get back to the game, there's a slight disconnect. Now that may just be me and my personal preference, but from a point of fluidity in the storytelling, that is a huge deal. You have to keep people continuously enthralled into the aesthetic that you've chosen for your game, and by them increasing the texture value on these little cutscenes, makes you sort of drop out of that when you go back to the game. But when it comes to the story of the game, how things are written and how things are voice acted, it's done very well. You would expect a professional level from the game and what it has to offer. I enjoyed my time in the game and I enjoyed beating the game, and the story that was related to me, the choices I had the availability to make, and the quests and side quests I had the availability to do. There's a large variety in between how the world reacts to whether you're reading books about the world or you're reading random newspapers which do account to events that have happened while you've been playing. There's a connection not only between the characters but the environment. And this is very important because it really helps propel an atmosphere that you're not just watching a story, but you are part of a story. Your actions do matter. And this is very nice to see. And I'll let you hear some of that voice acting and see for yourself right now.
I told Farida to put us down on a roof. I don't want the crowd seeing you go in.
Fine. As long as she pulls you out the minute I'm gone. So what am I looking at here? Who are these guys?
Pro-human purists, or so they say. The same purists who've been firebombing limb clinics all over the country.
You buy that?
Now, I don't think it's a coincidence they hit us today, only hours after we moved the Typhoon in for assembly line factory.
The Typhoon? Megan's team was testing it the day that bastard... Who's on point for these guys?
Adam, I know you and Megan were once...
Who is on point for these guys?
Goes by the name of Sanders. That's him, there. He's an augmented Adam, so he can't be one of the mercs who attacked us, but he did know exactly how to get inside our plant.
Alright, so how do you want me to handle this?
First priority is the Typhoon. I'm keeping SWAT out until you've secured it. As far as rules of engagement go, I'll defer to you. Lethal or non-lethal?
You look pretty dug in up here. What's the react team plan?
We got Alpha as point and Bravo as wing, both standing by to breach the target. We're coordinating from here, but until your boss gives us the go-ahead, we're just holding our dicks.
Realistically, how much time do I have before any shooting starts?
According to protocol, none. According to your lawyers, the sooner you get in there, the sooner we can hose this powder keg down and call it a day.
Mrs. Reed?
Adam, I'm sorry you startled me. And please, call me Cassandra. You and Megan were together long enough. I was waiting for you.
Her life signs are fading. Will you save her?
I'll think about it. Will you answer my questions now? I have more questions.
And I have already told you too much. This passage will take you to your companion. Just be careful, Adam. Because everybody lies.
Well, looky here. We got us a Boy Scout.
He must be the one who mucked up my operation at the morgue.
Get rid of him, Barrett.
Oh, that's gonna be a pleasure.
So at the end of the day, when everything is done and said, the game handles very well. The combat is very fluid, the weapons are very fair, they have good recoil and kickback, and you can adjust that with your abilities. The skill abilities are great for reacting and interacting with your environment, whether it be jumping off a huge ledge and not going splat, because you have the availability not to go splat with your upgrades, or being able to jump higher, or see through walls, or cloak, or whatever direction you may wish to take your character in. It has a good variety that ties very well into the stealth aspect and combat aspect of the game. But this would not be the case if the level design wasn't so good. The level design is broken up by different segments of a world. You have one main hub in Detroit and one main hub in China, and then you have different missions scattered elsewhere. The zones are pretty large. Now, the entire world may not be connected by one string, and you're not able to run around the entire world in an open world style. But I never felt that was really needed to, and perhaps some of the older players of the old games over 10 years ago are going to find the level design not as good as they feel it should have been. But what's important to note is that I never felt the game to be linear. You have the availability and choice to go in a direction that you want to, or more importantly, find a direction that you want to. The game heavily rewards exploration. Finding that pathway, crawling through the sewer, going in some fashion, rewards you experience and makes you feel like, hey, that's pretty cool. The game has done a good job on interacting with the environment on all fronts, and so I can easily recommend this game to anybody who may be interested in it. Thank you everybody for listening and watching. I've been SocioPsycho, and I'll see you next time.